Good. 6:36. I want to call the meeting to order. Attendance. Can we get a roll call, please? Glenn Strecker, not here. Tony Raposo, present. Lisa Cadali. That's in there, right?
Castelli.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. James Blank.
Here.
Hillary Lima.
Here.
Mike Sakosha. Absent. Review of emergency evacuation plan. The doors behind you, to my right, lead out the exit. And the doors to my right, in front of you, lead out to another exit in case of emergency. Approval of the minutes of July 14 meeting. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 14th meeting.
I'll second it.
We have a first and second. Any discussions? Hearing none. Pass, so move.
I was just going to take a vote to pass it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we have a vote?
Yes.
Yes. Oppose? No. So the meeting passed. Sewer ordinance. That's the next thing.
No.
Old business.
Old business. Yep.
Old business. Discussion of 2021-22 budget corresponding to usage rates.
I actually thought that Mr. Marchant was going to be discussing that item. He might have ran to grab something. Just give him a couple minutes. Ben, are you talking about the usage rates? Item number 5. 2021-2022 budget and corresponding usage rates.
I don't have anything prepared to speak on that.
Okay.
What I can share that the administrative officer before he left indicated an intent or desire to increase rates before the following billing cycle that began this month. And there was nothing prepared to actually do that. So it's usually a good practice to keep your rates just inching up incrementally so you don't have to do a big one 5 years down the road. But I think that's something that can be looked at any time going forward. You don't have to necessarily do it just in August. I think as part of a comprehensive review of the program, we can take that up at any time.
Okay. I do know that I'm pretty sure that rates were increased last fiscal year by, I think it was almost close to 50%, at least on the Coventry side for rates. And then I thought that there was a third party that was kind of doing the analysis of rates. Is that happening or no?
Do you know what the third party was?
I can get that name. It was somebody that the town had hired. That's how we got the first increase in rates, because they projected that we needed it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that study or received any of that material, so I'm pretty much starting from scratch.
Understood. I'll get you that information from last time.
Mr. Marchant, so just because I'm new, we're not determining rates to fill the budget hole, are we? We're not, that's not what rates are being raised for. It's just to cover.
I can't answer that question because I don't have the history and I don't know. What I have learned about the rates is there's kind of two parts to the rate. There's the part that we're at the mercy of West Warwick. When they increase their rates, it gets passed on to our account holders. And then there's the other part of the rate that the town would charge to keep its funds adequate to meet operating and maintenance requirements.
One last comment, Ben. Mr. Marchant, the title of the consulting firm was Ref Tellis. Does that name ring a bell?
Yes, it rings a bell.
That's
It's
who.
come up at least in conversation.
Yes, that's who had done the analysis on the usage fees and
Okay.
what the increase was based off of the last time around. So just wanted to circle back with you on that.
Thank you.
So is this something that the sewer subcommittee should drive to have a discussion on at a later date, or should we just assume that this will be done administratively regardless?
I think it would be prudent to rely on staff to administratively prepare the background justifications and scope of any project. Certainly, staff is here to take direction from the sewer subcommittee to pursue research and evaluation, quotes, bids, and that sort of thing for anything that you think is important. And then when my idea is, I'm unfamiliar with this process, is that it would be best if staff brought it back to the sewer subcommittee for review and recommendation to the town council before any action is taken.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't want to move on from this item with no idea of what we're going to do.
So I'll follow up with Reptalis and see if I can find that prior report that was used to justify a fee increase last year, and see if that report had, if it was just a one-time analysis or if it had recommendations for multi-year, and see what that says and get back to the committee with that information.
Okay. So we'll do that next meeting on this, on the 21-22 budget for the sewage rates. Next item is new business, discussion of an updated wastewater facility plan.
Thank you.
Jim usually does that. I don't know who's doing that now.
Thank you.
So I spoke with Mr. Nichols of Weston and Sampson to talk about the status of our current wastewater facilities plan. He confirmed that it was approved in October 2016. Under state law or policy, it needs to be updated every 5 years. So it will expire, or the validity of it will expire next month. There aren't any penalties or conditions I'm aware of for having an expired plan, but we discussed that since much of the plan is still relevant and it costs a lot to do a research to build a plan from the ground up, that he recommended, and I would recommend, that we do an update that reviews the validity of the existing plan, but more specifically provides a strategic plan or action plan on implementation, on next steps, kind of what the target areas they see in the plan would be for focus to maximize our value and benefit in developing our system and making it stronger and more solvent. The estimated cost he gave me was $70,000 to $80,000. I've asked him for a formal proposal to explicitly state what that would include in the scope. That what I'm giving you is what he told me in a conversation. So I am looking for more before I proceed to share that with the town council and move forward with an update to the facilities plan.
Who was that was giving you that quote?
Kent Nichols with Weston and Sampson.
Weston and Sampson. Now they did the last one, didn't they? The
Yes.
last facility plan.
I believe so.
I'm curious to see that quote, and Glenn would be more knowledgeable with that, but I don't know how much more work do they have to do upgrading the old facility plan to the new facility plan for $70,000. But he's more familiar with that than I am.
Yeah. He indicated that to build a plan from the ground up would be on the order of 250 to 300,000, which he didn't recommend expending, and with the validity of the plan. Now, I'm working with Mr. Nichols based on the history and the relationship the town now has. Certainly, it's not always a bad idea to go out for quotes and see, kind of what services other firms could provide. But so far, I have not heard of any complaints of any specific nature, just kind of general concerns that they've worked with the town for a very long time. And, a fresh perspective might be healthy, but on the basis of working with him now, it's been a positive experience for me so far.
Couple comments, if you don't mind. Troy?
Sure.
So the first one, I believe Weston Sampson has been doing this since 1982. They've been involved with Coventry in the sewer program. So I certainly agree that it might be helpful to go to RFP just to make sure that the prices that they're charging are reasonable. I also would just suggest going back to the last time that they did an update to see how much they charged us. 70 to 80,000 seems quite high, but I also do know that the facilities plan update is over 700 pages long. So it might be one of the reasons, but I certainly would be in favor of going out to bid. Thank you.
I got their last proposal there in 2014, which they were charging us $37,400.
Yeah.
So
Seems
that's kind of a big jump, I think.
100% agree.
I know things are tough, but things went up, but it's more
Double.
And what was the scope on the last one? Just an update like this?
it was a facility plan, same thing, 2014. This one is a 2009 drawing, so I'm sure the town has it on their records. Just find them in my ordinance book. But I agree with Jamie. We should probably put it out for an RFP just to see what we get for cost
All right.
savings.
Now, this would be an RFP for a wastewater facilities plan update or for a consulting relationship with a sanitary sewer engineering firm.
I would do both. You could separate them. So it's just an update and then for a full change out, but that'd just be my suggestion.
Or just wait for a legitimate quote from them. I mean, if they told you verbal, maybe the guy would look at what he's quoted before,
That's true too.
not realize that. Okay, so we're good with that? Moving on, discussion projects eligible for COVID funding. A is Briar Point, West Shore Drive Sewer, and B is the Coventry Drive Sewers.
Yeah, so when I met with Mr. Nichols, he talked about these two projects as being nearly shovel ready. Well, not Briar Point. It does have $175,000 of design work that needs to be done. But the Coventry Drive sewers were designed in 2017, and both of these projects could be put together in short order to be eligible for COVID funding within the time frame that's been given. As sewer projects, the full scope of their work is covered under COVID. The Briar Point project would build out the sewer system to serve West Shore Drive and allow activation of the Arnold Road dry sewers. That also includes building the pump station that would activate the dry sewer line. And that would support a total of 140 new sewer connections to the system. The project is SRF eligible, but it is not on the current project priority list. Same is true of the Coventry Drive Sewer Program. However, if I can jump ahead to, number 3B, we did ask to put both of those projects on the SRF funding list. There is a narrow window where they're doing an update right now because they have said that they're not going to be doing a new SRF list in 2022. And so they're going to carry over this year's list into next year. And so we wanted to get in that window on the update so that we could at least have it in the list next year if we're not eligible to put in for it next year. Being on that list doesn't really mean anything other than you're eligible for funding. It doesn't mean you're going to be funded, but it's part of the planning process that adds weight to your project by virtue of being on the list.
But doesn't the project have to be drawn and approved before you get funded on any type of project?
Yes, before you get funding, yes.
2 follow-up questions. You mentioned that these projects would be eligible for COVID funding. So could you just let me know how assessments would work? So, because if the COVID funds are going to fund these projects, how would the assessments be built?
So right now, we would follow the sewer ordinance and do all of the assessments as per the ordinance. I don't necessarily agree with the methodology that's already in place, but what the COVID funding does is it provides the funds to go ahead and do the project up front, and the billing for the assessments and betterments and everything else can be done as part of the project along the way. It's not going to be quite so. The town won't be cash flow restricted because we already have the COVID funds in hand right now.
So I think what you're saying is, said differently, we're not going to borrow the money from the infrastructure bank. We're just going to fund it ourselves, but then we are going to bill for assessments subsequent.
Yes.
I just when I hear COVID funding, sometimes it sounds like that's what's going to pay for it, and residents aren't going to have to worry about assessments. So I just wanted to call that out. So thank you very much. The second question I had was the procedure related to adding streets to that priority list. So I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't discussed first with the sewer subcommittee and or town council / sewer commission about what streets are going to be added to that list. Because I agree with you, once it's on that list, I've heard Weston and Sampson say, oh, it's on the priority list. So the state thinks that these streets really need to get done, which that's not really the case, in my opinion, at least. So what is the official procedure to adding streets to that list?
So I asked that question because I asked if we could delay putting it on that list until this meeting for the reasons you specified. I think it would be very helpful to have input from the sewer subcommittee and the town council. However, the deadline was Tuesday of last week. It was really early, and he needed an answer immediately as to whether or not I, as the town manager, would authorize him to recommend putting those on the list. And I did under the time pressure and constraints. But I think, to your point, the town council controls its own infrastructure projects and plans. Mm-hmm. And even if it's on the list, we don't necessarily have to fund them. Our priorities may change. I think we should introduce a more reasoned and justified approach to the projects the town takes on. And we may want to revise what's on that list down the road. And, I'm certainly open to reaching out to DEM and anyone that, should funding become available and we have a substitute project, we could ask them, hey, can we substitute this for that?
Thank you.
I just want to understand why we're going to have federal funding is able to go toward these projects, but none of the benefit or savings can be passed on to the residents. Like, it sounds like the town is going to benefit from this, but the residents will not benefit from federal funding.
Okay, I hear your question, and I think it's a good one. The only reason I can give is because they're two separate issues. As the administrator and town manager, I implement the ordinances of the town. If the town council or if the sewer subcommittee wants to recommend a deviance from those ordinances, a different solution, then that would be subject to the town council giving me direction on how they would like to treat these projects.
Okay, yeah, that was not directed at you. It was just me trying to understand.
Certainly.
Do you have any idea, because as you can see in public comment from our last minutes, and both of these projects into A and B are in my district, and especially the Briar Point folks, if they see that this was on the agenda, they're going to be elated, but they don't have a blank checkbook. So do we have any idea what we're talking about for assessments? Because I know I'm going to get asked.
Just if I take the total amount of the cost of the project divided by 140 accounts, it comes out to about 20,000 per account. If you do a strict division.
And that's not including agent doors.
No, and I wouldn't recommend doing it that way.
And then,
I think
even where the pumps come into
the conversations are needing to be had, kind of cart before the horse. But it is on the agenda later tonight to discuss the sewer ordinance.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And my other question too, I think other information that we should make publicly available that so people can understand, is what's the cost to install a new septic system these days? Because I would hope we'd want people to see, oh, the cost to go to sewer and the cost to go to septic are about the same. I'll just choose sewer, but it doesn't sound like that's going to match up. So, all right, but thanks. We'll talk about the ordinance when we get there. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm allowed to make this comment. I'm actually having a septic put in my house, and it's costing me between $13,000 and $15,000.
Makes sense. That's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And whereabouts? I don't want to give away your address, but just curious.
I live on Chopin Street, Anthony District.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, certain septics, if it's not a sand filter, sand filters could cost a lot of money, but traditional septic system, you're in the ballpark. But that includes your landscaping and everything afterwards. Yep. But I know sand filters and with the special effluent pumps and everything else you put in the tanks could run you 25,000, 30,000. Right.
That would be near water, right, Tony?
And that's if you're near water.
Yeah, I'm not near water.
If you got a high water table, that's where you typically use those. But if you traditional septic with good water tables, and you're in that neighborhood.
And the other thing too is that's 13 and 15 to install, and I'm sure that includes hooking it back up and everything else. Whereas that assessment that he mentioned, that's in ballpark, obviously not official, but that doesn't include change orders, the pumps, especially for the Briar Point people, and the tie-in after the fact.
And decommissioning.
Exactly. So.
And usage fees.
Yeah. So it's almost, we're talking like double, maybe close to triple what it's to put a septic system. So.
And the other thing you're missing with sewers is also interest if they're not going to pay it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interest over 20 years.
And I don't know anyone who's got 20 grand plus laying around. So anyway, but thank you though for preparing this. Appreciate it.
The COVID money, can I just ask how much is the town getting?
We have received just under 5 million.
And
so far.
And that's money that the town doesn't have to pay back the government?
Correct.
Free money.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Well, the free money comes with a number of federal strings attached in terms of reporting, accounting, and eligible uses. well, we can't use it for many things that we'd like to use it for, but they've specified that it can be used for anything, roads, water, sewer, stormwater, and to replace a loss of revenue as a result of the COVID pandemic, and various other things that become even more difficult to prove and document to meet their standards.
Okay. I'm in agreement with Hillary about the rates. We can talk about that later, but I think that it should go back to the town, to the taxpayers more than the town recouping on sewer fees and everything else.
I mean, it sounds like too, that with that area, no matter if there's COVID funds or not, that they're going to be higher because they're below the water table.
It's just that, yeah, you're right. It's just very expensive. It's an expensive area. It's a lot of rocks there. It's just costly to do the construction, but we can talk about that with the ordinance. I know we can break out the pavement schedules and eliminate that from the bids and have the town do their paving. When they do the town paving routines, put those into those type of projects where it tries to lower the costs up. We'll talk about that with the ordinance part. Any more discussion with the COVID funding? 6.2 questions. Moving on to 6.3, town manager's report. Brian DM State Revolving Fund. B, the sewer ordinance review, and C, the sewer strategic planning, which we touched a little bit about.
Sure. So just to finish up the SRF State Revolving Fund, the existing projects we do have in the list is for the purchase of a Vector truck, $425,000, and stormwater management phases 2 and 3 for the Upper Dam Pond at $950,000. Those are existing, so we'll be adding these two projects to that list just to have options open in the future. The sewer ordinance review, I've been here a short time. And kind of by way of introduction, since I haven't had the opportunity to meet the entire sewer subcommittee, my background as a town manager has a fairly significant amount of experience in managing wastewater treatment systems, collection systems. I've served in 3 other communities with wastewater treatment plants and sewer funds, and so I do bring a value to the community with other ways of running the program. And I see opportunities here to streamline the program and advance the program. I do see a path forward to the sewer fund climbing its way out of the debts that it's in. And I do see a way of making it quite a bit more reasonable for the public to connect to sewers than the way it's currently administered. So just first, I met with staff in June to kind of become familiar with their concerns and their observations. And so what you have under the sewer ordinance review in my notes was some of their suggestions for ordinance changes. Specifically to require betterment fees to be paid in full at the time the building permit is pulled. Chasing that down after the fact has been very difficult, and it makes sense to do it up front since they know what they're going to build when they pull the permit, and so it should be paid then. Establish a minimum use fee to stabilize user fees. I think there's some correlation in the ordinance with wells and assumed consumption and billing, and there could be some work done to make that more clear, consistent, and simplified. And that we should list the line items expensing the use fees, and so that when people are paying fees, they know where it's going. And it's broken out. So some of these are administrative, some of these are policy. But I would recommend that we take a broader, more comprehensive approach to revising the sewer ordinance. I think it would do everybody a lot of good to simplify assessments and betterments to a single flat rate connection fee. That way, everyone kind of has a level playing field when it comes to residential connection fees. I would treat commercial different. By nature, commercial is different and usually pays a higher rate, and that's typical. But this way, you can equalize projects regardless of whether there's ledge, high water tables, or whatever the situation may be. The connection fee isn't about the installation of pipe for the 150 feet across your property line. When you're connecting to the sewer system, you're essentially buying into someone else's share of the system to use capacity for all the collection lines that go for miles down the roads to get to the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the capacity, operations, maintenance, and debt on maintaining the wastewater treatment plant that ultimately treats the effluent that each account holder would discharge into the system. So, that's kind of my rationale for looking at it that way. I think it makes it more reasonable. I think kind of aiming for a connection fee that is proximate to the cost of a septic system is a good rule of thumb. It doesn't need to be exactly the same, but if it's in the ballpark, obviously the sewer system has some benefits over septic in that it's out of your hands for the maintenance person to be, you don't have to be personally responsible for it, that the town or the operator owns full liability for breaks in the lines, maintenance, sanitary sewer overflows, and all that sort of thing. I think, as I was preparing these notes, I was thinking about the sewer extension application. If you're in an area that is not served by sewers and you want to have sewers extended to that area, maybe it's a developer wants to extend it to a new subdivision, maybe it's a homeowners association that wants access, that should be treated separately from the connection fee, because you're actually fronting the extension of the sewer system to new area. As the utility owner, the town stands to benefit from the new accounts. But if this is an area where it's not on the plan, it's not attractive to the town to pursue that, you could negotiate with the developer, the owners, or who what have you, to share the cost of that extension, and then they'd pay the connection fees separately from that. When developers put in the sewer infrastructure to a subdivision, that's great, but that's just for this extension of the system. It's not for the connection fees. It's not buying into all the other collection lines in the wastewater treatment system. Requirement, again, I require payment of all fees at the time of that a building permit is pulled for connection and sewer extension. You could still waive sewer extension costs on the developer for what they put in, but not the connection fees. So those are some of my ideas. I think there's a lot more that you've thought about for a lot longer that would be part of the bigger conversation, but having a comprehensive approach to the sewer ordinance would be helpful and healthy. I think, as that was explained to me, the sewer ordinance was largely modeled after West Warwick. And the immediate problems I saw with that was you were comparing a brand new fledgling system to an established built out system. And what works for one won't work for the other. And I think Coventry's suffered the consequences of that, where trying to do it just the way West Warwick's done it doesn't really work, because we don't have enough accounts. We just don't have enough momentum to carry us through. So taking a look at that would be wise. So kind of related to reviewing the entire sewer ordinance, doing a sewer program strategic plan, kind of from the get-go, identifying what projects are going to be preferred on the basis of scale and value. Will it demonstrate an economical return on investment? Do you have enough accounts being added to justify the project? 7 accounts might not justify it unless you're digging through sand and it's really easy and cheap. But generally, you want a large enough project that it's cost effective and it brings the price down. I think the town as the utility owner has an interest in adding accounts more so than the account holder has to connect to the sewer. So making a more affordable connection fee is kind of mutually beneficial. And just kind of coming back to the same things we've already discussed, modifying the assessments and getting a facilities plan update that puts us kind of on a course that we are confident in and understand what the return on investment will be. There is talk about a future federal infrastructure bill. That's a very hopeful possibility to fund future projects. It's off in the distance. Who knows if it'll trickle down to Coventry, but there are other sources of revenue to anticipate and look out for. But generally, a utility is a business type enterprise that isn't often eligible for grants except through EPA, clean water, and that sort of thing under the Clean Water Act. So I understand that we have a current population of accounts of about 1,800 accounts out of a potential population of 14,000 based on the facilities plan build out. And the budget for the sewer fund is actually pretty strong. When I looked at it, it might not be breaking even and getting ahead, but what I found was that the monthly sewer bills are covering 70% of the expenses, and operations only represent 30% of expenses. So the existing sewer income is paying down the debt, which is really important. And I think the best thing that we could do is increase the number of counts to spread the load across more account holders, which will further improve the system and make it viable. So that's why I also was not so hesitant to put the 2 projects on the SRF list, because they represent adding 200 accounts, and this system needs more accounts. Any questions?
Based off of a lot of things that you just said, my preference is that we don't do any additional sewer work until the ordinance is updated. I think that's a consensus that has been, that the sewer ordinance needs to be updated for a very long time. And I just don't believe that residents should be subject to the current ordinance. And so my opinion would be that we don't do any sewer construction until that time.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Number 7, work session discussion, sewer ordinance review. I have here 2 papers, one from Glenn Skirka. Said something about betterment assessment. Betterment assessment, that's all it says. It doesn't say lower or raise. I talked to Glenn on this. I don't know if anybody talked to Glenn what he means by betterment assessment.
Maybe we should table it till he's here.
You want to table the full ordinance?
Oh, no.
Just Glenn's thing. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Lisa C. had discussions on the sewer ordinance on 191-3 on on-site water treatment systems. Says, yeah, any underground tanks and cesspools shall be cleaned of sludge filled with clean sand, gravel, and other approved materials immediately after connection is made to the public sewer, unless, just got this highlighted, a waiver is granted by the Director of Public Works. She wants that added to 191-3.
I want to know what would be the reasons for the waivers? Why would you have that waiver that you don't have to decommission your old cesspool or septic if you tie into the sewers?
Oh, that's on there now. You want it removed, or you just?
No, it's not listed. What would be the waivers?
So that's a question about why it says that.
Why does it say that?
More transparency as to why a review is given.
Yeah,
Directly.
exactly.
So that it's not just up to the director of public works.
And
And I tried
conceptually,
reaching out to him and asking him what would be the reasons, and I never heard back from him.
conceptually, I would like to see the sewer run as a program, and that the town at some point would have a sewer administrator and clerk to really relieve Public Works, the tax collector, the town manager's confidential assistant, who are all taking bits and pieces of this sewer program, but none of it's coordinated, none of it's consistent. You ask a really
Yeah.
good question, because I have no idea what the criteria are for waivers or not waivers. And with my understanding of their experience in sewers, I'm not comfortable with anyone granting waivers without me looking at it, because I have a lot more experience than most of them.
Because also in chapter A260, special acts, Article 5, collection and disposal of sewers, it's at the end of the ordinance. It also brings up mandatory sewer connections and filling and destroying cesspools. So it's saying that they have to be filled. And then the town, if they don't fill them, the town's going to come in and start charging them. So there's a lot of contradiction that needs to be covered, and I'd like answers to.
Yeah, if you could give me your questions, you can send it by email or just print it off, give me a list. Then I can take that into account comprehensively as we work through the sewer ordinance.
Specifications. That's part of
Yeah.
Okay, so-
191. Did you want to talk about that one too?
Oh, 191.
114 is the assessment.
Yeah, on the assessments, where it lists the assessments, it always says minimum of 2 bedrooms. So when I was reading it, I was getting confused as to, okay, no matter what, I'm going to get assessed on 2 bedrooms. I think it should be more transparent in being said, the parcel will be assessed on a 1-bedroom on the northeast valuation parcel card. And it'll only be assessed for the 1 bedroom. So what your house is assessed for, that's what your assessment would be based on.
So when it comes to revising the ordinance, we can either keep the same model that we have now and do assessments based on numbers of bedrooms, and we can get a lot more specific. But I would prefer to steer in a completely different direction, where a residential unit's a residential unit, regardless of how many bedrooms, and the flat connection fee, and it'll all get kind of covered in the sewer fee that they pay on a monthly, quarterly basis.
And I just had one more discussion on connection of assessments on corner lots. There's a lot of confusion about that, and you don't get an answer. And again, on chapter A260, the special act, Article 5, collection and disposal of sewers. Oh, I'm sorry. That's section right on the corner lots. On section 12. Where a lot is located at an intersection of two streets or highways in which sewers have been constructed, the sewer assessment on such bill shall be made only for the sewer in the street or highway in which the assessment would be greater. So the question is, the homeowner has the right to choose if they're on a corner lot, if they want to go on the side of their house or in front of their house where their address is. Because it has happened on Hazard Street. The person got a waiver that he did not have to connect on the Hazard Street. And he says he's going to connect on Knight Street. Well, the chances of him going down Knight Street now, we don't know because all work has been ceased over there. So now because he was not forced to connect there, that made the assessments of everybody else on the street a little higher. And also the person who was on the other side, on the other corner of the lot, did not have that option. And I believe there was, I can't remember his name, he called in. He was off Ty Oak and he was on a corner lot and he was saying, so do I get to choose? What makes one person be able to choose which way they want to go? And most everybody else is on their address street, that main street. So that's something that needs to be figured out because nobody has an answer to that.
So I say that's a good part of the policy discussion, that as the sewer subcommittee, you will have the opportunity to give an opinion and a recommendation to the town council as to what kind of ordinance to adopt and how to define. I think what most people are looking for, whether you're a private property owner or a developer, is a level of certainty, knowing what the rules are and what you have to do and what you don't have to do. And as long as there's ambiguity, you've got bad policy. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to be the one that has to make a decision based on ambiguous terms. I mean, courts are notorious for avoiding decisions.
So who would make that determination?
Right now?
Who made that determination that one person didn't have to connect?
That's a good question.
That's the $1 million question.
That's before my time, but a lot of things were done in ways that I can't explain right now. So I think looking forward, we definitely want to be able to assign responsibility for the decisions that are being made, who's going to make them and why. Good government is based on good laws, good policies, good ordinances, and the people that can uphold them consistently and fairly.
Now, why wouldn't that person be mandated to connect is my question. And they're being say the connection's not in the street. How do we have proof there's no connection under the ground?
Anytime there's a dispute that goes above staff, it becomes a decision of the town council, which is exclusively in the domain of political decisions. It doesn't have to be based on anything other than the desire and preference of the council. And the councils change from time to time, and maybe decisions would change too. And I think that's why you really want to get a good, clear ordinance so that you have that consistency.
Okay, because that ordinance I was reading from was part of the town ordinance. That's where I found that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that needs to be worked out.
I definitely second that as a priority to work through and policy for sure.
Agreed.
That's all I had. I'm good.
Sure. Thank you, Tony. My first suggestion is Chapter 191-2, use of public sewers required, paragraph D. It ends with within 1 year after the date of receipt of official notice from the town, said connections shall be made without exception. And then it says unless for reasons determined by the town and unless a waiver is granted by the town council.
What section is that again?
191-2, use of public sewers required. It's paragraph D. this is where the mandate comes into play. I mean, the talk is that we're doing this, the sewer program, to better the environment. If people have working septic tanks, I mean, I know from my research, out of 39 towns and cities of Rhode Island, there's actually like 16 that don't even have a sewer line in. So it can't be that much of a priority of the state of Rhode Island that we put sewers in. I would suggest that we change this only to state that if a person has a cesspool, but if they have a working septic, they do not need to connect within 1 year. The mandate to connect within 1 year, especially for someone who just put a brand new septic in at the time. It was shocking for me to hear that I was told that I needed to put a hole in my brand new septic that I just paid $14,000 for. And if I didn't do it, that I would have to pay $1,000 a day fine. Didn't make any sense to me. So I believe that that mandate needs to go away. And if it needs to stay, it should only be for cesspools. The next one would be chapter 191-3.
Can I just,
Sure.
I agree with you 100% on that one. But we do have I do know there's an ordinance that if you have a new septic, you have, I believe it's 10 years.
So it's interesting that you bring that up.
But I wanted to extend that.
Yeah.
I think that should be extended.
Totally agree with if we're going to keep this mandate in, but that waiver is granted. But currently it says that you have to go in front of the town council to get it.
Yeah.
It is not automatic.
Okay.
So if it's going to be automatic, it should state that it's based off of the certificate of conformance and it's the date on that certificate of conformance. But what's confusing is the past town council told everybody, oh, you have a 10-year deferral, but it's not 10 years from when the sewer line goes by your house. It's 10 years from the date of the certificate of conformance of your septic tank. So let's hypothetically say that in 2020, a sewer line went by your house, but you installed your septic 5 years before that. The town council was telling everybody they have a 10-year deferral, but it's not true. If you had put your septic in 2015, you only have a 5-year deferral once that sewer line went by your house in 2020. So it needs to be explicit. I agree with you that if that is going to be the waiver, because you have a brand new septic, that we extend it at least 20 years, because septic systems, if you maintain them, can last upwards of 30 years.
I agree. Yeah.
So totally agree with you on that one, Tony. The next one was paragraph C. Again, actually, Lisa had brought this one up. It calls out the Director of Public Works allowing a waiver. And it also talks about abandoning and filling when public sewers becomes available, your septic system. I think that we should strike out abandoning and filling when public sewer becomes available. And then I would suggest that we change it to say when the property owner has decided to connect to the public sewers, that's when it gets filled, and abandoned. Chapter 191-11 appeals. This talks about granting a homeowner an appeal only if they appeal within 30 days. I think we should extend that to 90 days because it might take them 30 days just to figure out that they can appeal. So I think we should extend it at least 90 days, but I would hope that we could extend it longer than that. 191-14 is assessment. Going along the lines of Mr. Marchant, I believe a fixed fee for residential homes. Living on a street where a sewer was selected for my street, I didn't know how much my blank check was that I was giving to the town. I was told $30,000, but that's if the project went without a hitch. But I also know that they got stuck on ledge for 4 days. They couldn't even move an inch. So that change order would have to come in. And if they kept on going on my street, they would have kept on hitting more and more ledge. So I know exactly how it feels to know that I was giving the town a blank check and they could write $50,000 for a sewer assessment. So I think we need to make sure the town has skin in the game. It holds the town accountable to make sure that the expenses are appropriate. And then anything over the fixed fee amount, the town has to pay. So the town would go to bat for the residents on that street if a construction company was trying to change order after change order after change order. I believe it should be, I think Ms. Lima stated around the price of a septic. So anywhere between 13 to 15, 16,000 would be appropriate. And then the town would have to pick up the rest if we want to continue on this path of installing sewers. Paragraph H in that same in the assessment section. So chapter 191-14, paragraph H talks about the assessment payment over 20 years for cash flow purposes and for an option for homeowners. I believe maybe offering either a 20-year or a 30-year payment plan just to lower that monthly payment. A lot of our residents, I mean, everywhere, people are living paycheck to paycheck. So any way that you can get some type of relief, even though you are paying a little more in interest, I think it could reduce the monthly payment. Paragraph J in the same section talks about notifying residents. I believe future sewer users should be notified 2 years in advance by public posting, advertisement, and certified mail, so that we know that they know sewers are coming and they can come to public meetings and voice their opinion about said project. And why 2 years is because the Auditor General in his recommendations specifically states that we should give homeowners 2 years notice. Paragraph K talks about if the town assesses and those assessments by the homeowners on those streets actually exceed the amount of the contract and all costs, the town just gets to keep those funds. It says assessments collected in excess of the bond indebtedness shall be retained by the town sewer fund and be used for capital improvement projects. Seems quite vague to me. I actually think any excess payments should be used to reduce future sewer assessments to help out future sewer connections to lower the cost. And my last recommendation, sorry, it's quite the list. Chapter 191-21, Waterman Fisk Sewer Fund Assessment Relief Program. It talks about a certain percentage. So it says if the total sewer assessment is greater than 15% of the total assessed value of the property, that's when they get benefit. I actually think it should be 20%. It would actually give the homeowners more relief. But I know that would probably be a discussion for the town council. It's actually, it was a new section that was added last year. Chapter 191-21, it's called the Waterman Fisk Sewer Assessment Relief Program.
It's on top of the right. Look at these.
Current paragraph B2.
That's what I'm looking for.
And it talked paragraph B2. Sorry, Tony.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, talks about 15%
Yep,
of the total
I see it.
assessment. And that's everything I had, Tony.
Now, you were referring to (191-14) assessment, paragraph H on the 20-year connection. Then we have something to do with the rate on the interest rate.
Legislation. So legislation was passed because this section actually stated that the town could charge 6% interest.
Yeah.
I actually had worked with Senator Raptakis. We were able to pass a bill that states that the town can't charge more than, I believe it's 0.5% more than the amount that the town got the funds for to do the project. So if the project was, let's just say that they got the funds at 1.75% from the infrastructure bank, they couldn't charge more than 1.75 plus 0.5%.
0.5% is for.
It's just for admin fees. Yep, you got it.
So that's already in this new ordinance.
It is.
It's in this part.
So in my opinion, I don't believe the town's applying it appropriately because due to system limitations, is what I was told, they're actually using a rolling average of all debt of the entire sewer program's debt. But the legislation specifically states for each project, they can't charge more than 0.5% of what they got the funds for.
Correct.
But again, it was just to provide homeowners with some relief.
Okay, great. Great points.
I got some notes.
Okay, Hillary, let's hear them.
So Jamie and Lisa already hit on a couple of them, so I won't repeat myself. Let me see if I can find one. I'm looking at 191-5, construction of sewers by private developers. I highlighted section C. I don't know if this would be the appropriate place, but I'm very concerned, and I'd like to see protections for single family homes. And I don't know, this might be me going overboard, but it really grinded my gears to see some tie-ins that I was asked to approve in my first couple of months at the town council level that were lower than a single family home would ever see for those who are developing homes or developing neighborhoods. I just would like to see some protections in here for single family homes that they never see an assessment that's larger than a developer, or anyone who owns a multi-home property. So I don't know if that's the appropriate place, but that was a note that I had made there.
Can I make an observation?
Yes.
I think that's a very worthy aspiration. The problem with comparing a single family home with a development is the economies of scale. Doing 200 units, you get the price per unit way down than if you're a stick-built home builder. And so there needs to be a parameter, because one developer's per unit rate might be way lower than the next developer's, and both of them are lower than a single family individual build. And so I think what you want to do is address the formula by which we calculate the charges, the fees,
the one that's specifically in my head is there's a property on Washington Street with 7 apartments in it. And the assessment we were shown was about $30,000. So how can something have 7 units and only have an assessment of $30,000? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. And I would say that apartments should be treated differently because they're commercial in nature, not residential. And that there should be a different formula and calculation.
All right.
But your question is well taken.
All right. I think Tony kind of brought up the point I was making for 191-14. This is back into assessment. I think we need to reconsider what the average life of a septic tank is. We already talked about it, whether it's 20 years, whether it's 30 years. And I just wanted to, and I made a note too, I'm not sure if section B of this clause contradicts with the clause Mr. LeBlanc brought up back in the beginning regarding the waiver and the time that you have when after it goes by your house. So I just want to make sure, again, like you said, this is for modeled after West Warwick, which is a fully operating, almost 100% sewer town. So I just want to make sure we have some other caveats.
In my last community, the way they dealt with septic systems was that you weren't required to connect to sewer until it failed an inspection. You couldn't repair or replace your septic. You had to connect to sewer. And that way you eliminate any particular time frame, because as long as it's working and maintained, you're good. So you could look at something like that.
Just a quick follow-up to that, though. So they didn't have to connect until they couldn't repair it. But when did the assessment kick in?
It would have kicked in at the time they connect, because it's a single connection fee.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, there was I remember there was a specific project where the new sewer line was going in, and we created an option for the residents. You can either pay the connection fee now under the current rate or not pay it. But if you don't pay it now, you don't get this rate in the future. You pay whatever the going rate is 5-10 years from now, whenever you choose to connect. And that had the added advantage of one, getting funds for that connection into the program and basically having the accounts pre-signed up, prepaid, but then not doing the actual connection until down the road. But if they didn't want to pay, they didn't have to, but they knew they were going to be on the hook for whatever the cost was down the road.
My only follow-up to that would be, what if they sold their house, didn't connect? What would the lien be on their house when they sell it?
There would be no record of a connection paid on the property in the account in the sewer program. And so the new property owner would owe the fee. I think the more astute question would be, what if they had paid the fee and then sold? Does their prepayment carry on to the next buyer? And I don't recall the answer to that. I don't think we ever got that far.
Okay.
The other comment I had on this section was, and maybe you kind of alluded to this, and it didn't process in my mind that way, but having a max assessment amount. But I don't know if that's financially feasible or how that would work, but just another note that I had made in that section. On the following section of pages around the JK area, 19114, Mr. LeBlanc actually already addressed some of these. My question was in I specifically, if it is necessary to install a grinder pump for an existing residential dwelling that is located in a low-lying area along the town's gravity sewer system, the town will credit the residential assessment charge for that property by the amount of $5,000. The property owner or agent shall submit a plan proving to the town that the property is too low to connect to the town's gravity system by conventional gravity means. I was just curious, how does the average person know how to work with somebody to prove that and make that happen?
I don't know. I've never come across this in my experience. In each of the 3 communities where we ran sewer, 2 of the communities would have had situations where people were below grade and needed pumps or grinders, and it was always deemed a private property responsibility. The sewer, if you want to connect to the sewer, you run your lateral. And if you have to go uphill, you put in a pump to get it up to the main line. And from the main line on, the sewer system takes it from there. And then it was a private property responsibility. I didn't see any provisions like this done anywhere else. Not saying you can't do it. It's completely legitimate to set up a system however you like to. But in terms of sustainability, it's problematic having public infrastructure on private property. You need easements, permissions, notifications, so it's best left private infrastructure to private property owners to maintain. And that way, if they're abusing their systems and putting, carrot skins and potato peels down the drain and clogging their own grinder, it's not the utility provider's responsibility. It would be theirs.
Yeah, I was just thinking people barely know when a council meeting is. How would they know how to make the case to prove this?
So your question is, how do they know that they're lower than what the?
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the assessment, and then who teaches them the process of how they have to prove this, or
the installer that's going to hook up the sewer. So
the
if they
plumber.
call for some quotes and they see the card that the sewer elevation is higher than their foundation, then they're going to need a pump to pump up to it.
mm-hmm.
And that's when the town gives $5,000 credit. I know in the town of East Greenwich, they give the homeowner the pump. So the town has all these E1 pumps in public works, and they give the homeowner the pump.
Okay.
And they're responsible to do it. That's $5,000, a pretty good deal. I know these pumps are around $38,000, $4,000 for an E1 pump. So you're giving more than what if the town just had the pumps to give to the homes.
My only concern with the pump is, so let's just say the sewer line went by a house assessment's 20,000. The town's saying, we're going to give you a $5,000 credit on your sewer assessment. But the homeowner still needs that 5,000 to go buy a pump, but they have to come up with the actual cash to buy that pump.
Correct.
So the credit is a hypothetical credit, and the homeowner is going to still be out the 15,000 for the sewer assessment. Plus they have to come up with another 5 to buy the pump. Then they got to come up with another 5 or 6 to actually connect their house. And if they don't have any of that money, they're going to borrow it, and it's going to have to pay interest on said borrowings. So that's my problem with the pump. I like how the town is just giving the pump to the homeowner.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to
We
me.
can do that. I mean, that's something that we can talk about. But I
Yeah.
know there's towns that give you the pump. You're responsible for it.
I don't know, but I can't speak for anyone else up here, but just having to pay extra for things that are out of your control. Like I can't control that there's ledge in my street. These people who are in Briar Point can't control that they have to pump up. I just think having to pay a premium for things that you can't control about where your house is located seems a bit, insert adjective here.
The devil's advocate would just say they made a choice about which property they bought and where they live. And that goes with the property. So I don't mean to be cold about it, but there's that side of the equation too.
Sure, but did they buy it and know that they were going to get slapped with a sewer assessment?
No.
Because I think that levels the playing field. If you're told, like, I know of somebody a couple of streets up from me who bought a home, it has a cesspool, and they were told before signing any paperwork or making an offer, you're going to have to replace that thing. So he bought the home with the understanding that he was going to have that responsibility. When I bought my home, no one said, the town of Coventry is exploring sewers and you should know that there's ledge all up your street. So your assessment, none of that was relayed to me. So,
And if I can add, the assessment is paying for the pipe to go by your house. When you sell your house, you can't dig up that pipe and take it with you.
Nope.
So essentially you're gifting the town this infrastructure when we're already paying $6,000-$7,000 in real estate taxes that you're presuming would pay for the town's infrastructure. So, but I do agree with you that it's not the same because the homeowners needs to be told that there potentially is a sewer that could come down your street. Do you still want this property?
Anything we can do to eliminate the uncertainties and provide better notice and understanding is going to be good.
and then we already talked about it, but I had put the note under section K here. We should have some sort of clause for what happens in the transfer of home ownership, and who's taking over the sewer assessment payments. Or, you know, if the person couldn't pay down the loan in full, which I don't know how many could. I think I don't know that there's really a clause in here that talks about when home ownership transfers. So that was one. I had one more. That might be it. That's it for me, Tony.
I had, one of the biggest ones was the paving. When we do new sewer construction, I'd like to have the paving separated from that sewer project and have the town put that in their yearly paving project. So if we know we're going to do a sewer project, let's say down Hazard, there will be no quote on that sewer project for paving. The town will have that as their paving project already to do the paving work on Hazard. So that cost wouldn't occur on that.
So that's already in effect because the town was preempted by state law. That's already in state law for the town of Coventry that we cannot charge paving to a sewer project.
Great.
I think it's unfortunate policy. I would agree that the cost of the paving shouldn't be an excuse to put that on the homeowners and through their assessments to fund a project. But I think on the other hand, that if they're all paying the same flat connection fee, that the sewer program should be paying for the pavements to finish the job that they started by cutting into the street, when the sewer fund, assuming it's healthy, has its own revenues to pay for things like that, whereas the general fund has exactly zero budgeted for paving this year. And so if there were to be a sewer project, if the town doesn't have the money to pave it, we just can't do sewer projects because we can't pave it.
Right.
And
Sewer
that's going to be a
That's going to have to work.
existential problem that we have to solve in some other way.
Well, it's going to have to work hand by hand. In other words, if the town doesn't have the money to pay for the paving that year, then the sewer would have to be delayed until the town has the money.
Well, and it's also
pave.
tying the town's hands as to fixing roads that need to be repaired that don't have sewers versus where sewer projects need to go.
Right.
You can't do them both, probably.
Well, we can't, but we can coordinate it. So that's stuff that can be planned and coordinated.
Sure.
We're not looking to do sewers tomorrow, but years to come, when you know you're going to have a sewer project, we should look into that and
Okay.
have that money allocated for the paving. That's my 2 cents anyhow. I did have a list. I brought the wrong sewer ordinance book. I brought the wood one, but I had a paper list that I didn't bring. And there was a lot more stuff on there that I'm trying to remember. But that was one of them. The extending the septic system was another one. I'm glad that Jamie pointed out on that, but I will get you the list that I had and I'll email it to you.
Great. Thank you.
My only follow-up to the paving conversation. So why would it be fair? Let's just say you're going into a neighborhood with sewers, but they know that one street's not going to get sewers, but the town has elected to repave their street for them. And those homeowners aren't getting a paving assessment because the sewer line's not going down that one. But in the same neighborhood, the town council, not the residents, have selected to go with a sewer line down a different street. But in your example, you're saying that it's okay that the paving costs are included in the sewer assessment because the town council went up that street.
No.
But for the other street that didn't get sewers, the town is paying for that paving. I'm just confused.
I was not talking about any paving being paid by any part of sewer assessments. I said sewer fund.
So the sewer fund still could pay for the paving,
Yeah.
even under current state law. It just cannot, the paving costs cannot be in the sewer assessments.
Okay. So if the sewer fund is healthy and has a fund balance, we could take 200 grand out of that, which is not part of the sewer assessments, to pay for the paving of the sewer project.
Correct. The paving costs just cannot go in the assessments.
Because my reading of the state law is just, you can't use any sewer money for any paving period.
No, it's the sewer assessment. They can't be attached to sewer assessments.
Okay. That's super helpful. Thank you for the clarification.
Mhm.
I'll make sure I understand that law correctly.
Okay.
That gives me a lot of relief.
It's all good.
Is there anything we can do with the usage fees? I don't know where we stand with them and how much. I know we're not making a lot of money, but the usage fees on some of these, especially commercial, $80 a gallon for GDP.
Which section is that?
This is section 114. I mean, 191.14. I'm sorry, 191.12. I'm sorry, 191.14. I guess it's section 2, D2.
That's the part of the assessment
Non-residential
calculation.
assessments.
So that goes back to the conversation where we were recommending a flat assessment fee. So that would actually be removed if we just say homeowners are only going to pay $13,000 and then the town's going to pick up the rest. So that would get rid of that calculation.
So it'd be flat for residential.
Correct.
And then commercial, because commercial is so broadly different, you would want to have different tiers and classifications based on effluent strength. If you're just a doctor's office and you're functioning like a residential, it should be closer to the residential rate. But if you're dumping high strength effluent from milk products or fat soils, grease from restaurants or whatever, then you should be paying a much higher assessment and use fee because you're putting such a greater load on the system. And so there are models and formulas all over the country and every other place about how to calculate those.
Right. So like right now they use the 3-bedroom residential dwelling at 115 gallons per day, which you got to multiply times 3. I mean, and then they come up with at the 43, 48 gallons per day, it's $15,060. I mean, I know that's the method of what DEM says the gallons of usage for each bedroom takes is 115 gallons. But I mean, I don't know if that should apply to us or it should apply to this.
It's
just
a
seems-
formula that someone used. It's not one that we particularly have to use as far as I know. The town could devise its own scheme and set of formulas.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other? Did we ever talk about doing a workshop? Can we do a workshop for this ordinance? Or is that open meetings laws or?
They're still open meetings. The advantage of work sessions is that they're scheduled without votes that have to be made, and it's more of an open dialogue forum, at least in the ones that I've participated in. And you want to kind of prep your agenda more broadly so that you can talk about everything you need to talk about. I think
it'd be nice to just to have an ordinance workshop. Let's roll our sleeves up. Let's write this stuff down and let's put it on paper and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then give it to
That'd
the
be
town
great.
council
Yeah.
to approve.
and a lot of this, I
Nice to
think,
just sit around a round table and let's just have someone put this down on paper. And
rather than getting bogged down in the minutia of what you already have in front of you, if you could begin with the end in mind of what are the results you want to go for, and then we can work backwards to write an ordinance that gets those results in the cleanest, most expeditious manner. My hesitation is like, oh my gosh, how do I slog through this and come up with a change? Better to scrap the whole thing and say, okay, here's what we want to accomplish. We want to level the playing field. We want it clear. We want it consistent, and work backwards from there, pulling from models of other best practices in other communities where they're already doing it. But I think a work session is the best way to do that. Yeah,
So-
everyone can do a little bit of research. Everyone can bring their ideas.
is that something that we can do within the next couple of months? Is that doable?
Certainly.
Can we give out what dates were available and we can?
Mhm.
When does this ordinance have to be done? When do we want to?
There's no
There's no time frame.
there's no deadline right now. It's just, if we really want to try to get roads on that list for the state and actually figure out funding, especially if we're going to use COVID funding, it has to be sooner rather than later. But I don't want to, I feel like with a lot of things in town, it's always at the last minute and we're doing it because it's a deadline and as a requirement. Just like we added these 2 streets or we're potentially adding it to this revised list. I don't like that because you're forcing things that shouldn't be forced.
So I would say that just to kind of set an expectation of parameters so that we're not rushing against a deadline. We know from the beginning, we know that the deadline to expend the COVID funds is 2024. That's 3 years away. We know that in order to do those projects, the design has to be done by early 2023, go out to bid in 2023, so that if there are any delays, it can be finished in 2024 and expended in 24. So we can get the design done concurrently because you don't begin assessments until construction. So I would say the goal to have an ordinance adopted and done would be by mid 2023. I think 6 months is enough time to go through a process to get a new ordinance drafted. But there you go. You got 18 months comfortably.
I would agree. I don't I don't think that any more people need to be burned by astronomical assessments if they don't need to be. And if we can get to a formula and use the COVID funds to our advantage, especially for those specific areas, I would agree. I think it's better to do it right than to feel like we got to rush it. But it sounds like we have plenty of time.
But don't let it fool you. It goes quick.
Yeah.
If we can't get a quorum, then it might take extra months to get a meeting.
When is good for everybody to, nights to get together or
Yes.
Saturday or
Yep.
nights? Do you like the Wednesday nights, Tuesday nights?
It's fine by me.
Any day.
Yeah, as long as it's far enough in
But we
advance.
should probably include the other members, just get there.
Yeah, we can get there. I think we can get something next month, October, maybe the week of the 25th or something. Is that what?
I'm sure I can make it work. Talking about the ordinance, for sure.
Or even sooner than that. I'm game.
Yeah.
I'm game to move.
Yeah, me too. Because I'd like to get this done and
Actually get it
behind us and
completed.
and
Yep.
get something. I think we should get together around a table, grab this, and let's start from number one and work our way right through this thing. Scratch out what we need to scratch out, put what we want to put in.
And we could say that to the members, send an email saying our goal is extreme transparency and over communication, fairness and equity in assessments. And there was a third one, Mr. Marchand said. I can't remember, but just the idea of what do we want out of this? And when you go through this, try and see what aligns with that and what doesn't.
I agree. Love to have public input too. So by that,
Yes.
number 8 is public and subcommittee members' comments. So we have any public comments out there? Seeing none. Subcommittee, anybody on subcommittee have any comments? None? All right. Number 9, adjournment. Can we,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Adjourn.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So moved.